Hello, my name is Amos St. John, and welcome to my new podcast, Coffeehouse Conversations. For those who may not know who I am or anything that I've done in my career thus far, I'll share with you a story and let you know a little bit of where I come from. I was born in Long Island College Hospital in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Jamaica, Queens, to a Dominican mother and a Haitian father. I'm the youngest of my mom's 4 kids and my dad's 3 kids. And therefore, I'm considered a first-generation Haitian Dominican American. And I wasn't raised with what you would call a traditional viewpoint of the American dream. Basically, I was taught the principle of making it work with what you have before you get what you need. So, but I did come up in a very, religious but creative and musical environment in my household. My mother loved to sing at church, and my dad was a music minister and an organist. So even at the age of 5, he sat me down on that piano bench and started teaching me how to play the piano and music theory, and that's where it all started for me. And thankfully, I took it and flew with it. So, majority of my adult life, I've functioned as a professional musician and a music minister like my dad. So as I reflect, I realize that, growing up in Jamaica, Queens, we didn't have a lot of money flowing around, but we what we had, we really made do. I couldn't tell that we were, not as fortunate as others may, but because from my perspective as a young kid, life was good. Even though I didn't have the fashionable clothing or latest designer jeans or sneakers, like living in the Ave, what people affectionately call Jamaica and Jamaica Queens. And so but one thing I did have access to was a lot of music. I could reflect, in Jamaica Ave, they used to play this place called the Coliseum. And in the Coliseum was this music store called CNC Music Factory. And I was a little kid at the time, but they used to always let me hang in that music store and listen to the latest music, all sorts of music. Even before they come in, I used to see some of the hip hop artists pop in. I used to see LL Cool J, Biz Markie, a whole lot of Queens bred artists, hip hop artists. And, it was just regular casual day in Jamaica. So, that was my upbringing. I didn't have, Nintendo or Sega or Atari. I had music. I had an old upright at the house. And so when I used to, I used to get in punishment, my dad was like, no TV, no nothing. I'll just go to the piano and just come up with music. And so for high school, my parents decided to change our scenery. And so we decided to move to Orlando, Florida. And surprisingly, in Orlando, Florida, that's where I really cultivated this creativity and this musical gift to the point that, I used to get paid as a 15-year-old musician at a Baptist church in Orlando. And that's where it all really started for me, really from a professional aspect, receiving a stipend. And from 15 on to this day, that's basically how I lived, and fortunate to live in different cities, from Orlando, opportunities opened in Atlanta. I lived there. And then, I moved to Baltimore and then started working in DC. So the whole DMV circuit, spent about 14 years in the DMV. And so, I've been fortunate to play and work for some small churches, but some of the country's largest mega churches, these big faith-based organizations, and through which I've been able to establish a lot of great relationships and connections to some of the world's most renowned gospel artists and inspirational artists and industry execs. And so this year, surprisingly, I'll be turning 40. And so that means I've been doing this for almost 25 years. And I've gone through some amazing highs and some crazy lows, And so even while being a church musician and music minister, I've been fortunate to do some industry work and be a songwriter and producer, and even a recording artist. I've released some independently released albums, and some songs featured on a few artists' albums, and so it's been a blessed journey thus far, and now I've decided to do a podcast. And one of the reasons I've decided to do a podcast is that with all that I've experienced in life thus far, I realize it's time to really help motivate and inspire, encourage someone, and let them know that you can live a significant life despite of your current circumstance, your background, your race, your religion, or even your political affiliation. And another reason why I decided to do this podcast was my wife. My wife, her name is Jasmine. We've been married for about almost 9 years, and we're parents to a beautiful 5-year-old girl named Gracie. And you'll learn more about our family life, and you'll meet my wife, Jasmine, in a later podcast. But she was one of the main reasons I decided to do this, because she'd be one of those ladies that listen or watch something online and say, babe, I could see you doing that. And she's been a tremendous encouragement to do this. So a couple of years ago, we decided to step out on faith and leave the comforts of the DMV area and move to Dallas, Texas. So it's going almost on 3 years. And, I'll talk about that transition on another podcast. But I tell you, it's been a tremendous journey. We are blessed and we're thankful to have made it this far. We have our beautiful home, in which I am sitting in Little Elm, and I am so thankful for this journey. And so, I'll be chatting about more of that in future podcasts, but specifically in the last year, I've been having some amazing conversations with some of my friends and mentors. And, through these conversations, I realized how impactful and significant and rich this information and this insight and perspective that comes from these conversations, and something hit me. It was like, I think it's time for the world to experience this. The world really need this, and they really need to hear this. So I just decided to say, why not do a podcast? And so I'm starting this podcast, and I'll be having great conversations with some of the world's greatest creatives I've ever come across, and some great thinkers and some positive and influential people to help make your day and life a more healthier journey for you. And so, I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of thinking. And so, in my readings, in one of the books I read, I like the author and a great, great, great leader, John Maxwell. And in one of his books, Intentional Living, Choosing a Life That Matters, he says, for anything to have great meaning, it needs to be driven by a specific objective and followed through with action. So I really, truly hope that this podcast will give you a spark, to step out of the shadows of depression, worry, anxiety, self-doubt, and exchange it for joy, self-worth, love, peace, and happiness and success. And I truly hope that this will help you make that shift. So what's next? Subscribe to my podcast. Follow me on my social media. And I'm on Instagram. My personal page is Amos St. John. And the podcast is ASJ Coffeehouse Conversations. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on YouTube at Amos St. John. And you'll be having some great information, some very inspirational conversations, enlightening conversations, and really, really hope that this can help put a smile on your face, because this world is so filled with confusion and hate, and it's time to fill it with more love, more peace, more light. So I really hope this will be a great journey for us. And until next time, thank you so much to listening to the Coffeehouse Conversations.